Hello, this is Maura Brennan. I'm standing in for Kathy Heyer today, who's unable to make it. This is the first of a series of planned NAJ advocacy mentoring calls. The topic for today is how to set up and conduct a meeting with legislators. And we're going to run to about 4:30 this afternoon. And I probably should start by introducing myself, the other folks who are participating in the session, and find out who's called in. I'm Maura Brennan. I'm the project director for the Bay State GWEP and the president-elect for NAJ. I'm at Bay State in Springfield, Massachusetts. On the line, we also have participating in a panel in a little bit, Jan Busby Whitehead, who is the director of the Geriatric Education Center and GWEP at the University of North Carolina, and one of the three leads for the Hartford Coordinating Center for the GWEPs. In addition, Jan has participated in a number of delegations on trips to the Hill to support Titles 7 and 8. We also have Bert Waters from the Virginia Center on Aging. He's the assistant director of the Virginia GWEP, and he's gone to a number of Hill days as well. And along with Kathy and Brian Lindbergh, represented the GWEPs at the 2016 Health Professions and Nursing Education Coalition meeting as well. Our featured speaker later on today is Brian Lindbergh, who is the policy advisor for NAJ and our lobbyist in Washington, D.C. He does a fair amount of policy consultation for other groups as well, including the Gerontologic Society of America. So I wonder if, since our secretary isn't on today, if I could hear from people who are either on the telephone or who have called in so that we'll know who our attendees are.
It's Robin Golden for Rutgers University Medical Center.
Okay, thanks, Robin.
Chris Clark at UNC.
Chris Clark, okay, thank you. Anyone else on the line yet? Okay, folks, maybe calling it a little late. A Friday afternoon can be a bit of a challenge. I'm going to pass the baton for a moment to Brian, who has some quick updates for us and the other callers around recent legislative action over the last day or two. Brian?
Thank you, Maura. I appreciate that. And a couple points first, and that is it's a small group, so feel free to jump in and ask a question if you've got it. And we're keeping in mind that this is a recording so that folks can listen to it later on their own schedules. So it's been a really busy week in Washington. I just wanted to bring you up to date on a couple items before we dive into the rest of the agenda. First, you may have heard that there was a potential compromise bill that would repeal and replace Obamacare, the ACA. They were trying to get that vote done this week before the 100 days, the first 100 days of the Trump administration came to a close. It will close tomorrow. They were unable to get the votes. They've delayed a vote. They don't have a date for a vote next week, even if they can. There are various rumors out there, but between 15 and 21 Republican members have said they won't vote for the bill. If they lose, they can only afford 22, basically, to say that they won't vote for it because they won't get any Democrats. So that's the status of that. There was a lot of emailing and such advocacy work this week to try to make sure that that didn't happen by those that oppose the repeal and replace, and evidently it has at least slowed things down. On the fiscal appropriations for fiscal year 2017, they were unable to come to a final package this week, so today the House and the Senate passed a short-term 1-week extension, continuing resolution is what we call them, for FY 2017 funding. That'll get us through about Thursday next week, and when they hope to have the final bill on the floor of the House and the Senate for a vote. As you recall, that's one of the proposals was from the president to use that vehicle to cut into healthcare professionals training. So that didn't happen. We're hopeful that they'll just continue funding next week, and we'll be moving on to the FY 2018 appropriations and budget, and that's what we're going to talk more about today. So that's all I had as an update, Maura. Thank you.
Okay, very good. What we were going to try as a format was a case-based approach. I am actually new to advocacy, and I'm working right now to try to set up a site visit. So I'm going to talk a little bit for just a couple of minutes about what I'm trying to do, what I've done so far, and see if I can get some advice from people with more experience, Brian and others who are on the line to guide me. And I'm hoping maybe that will also provide some useful information for people who may be neophytes like myself. So I have had no experience with advocacy other than an occasional email here or there. I'm trying to set up a site visit for probably the health affairs staffer for our local congressman, who's a Democrat who's fairly closely involved, Richie Neal, with supporting a health care policy. And one of the things I've been trying to do is, because of advice I got before, to work through our institutional sort of government liaison person. And I'm wondering what Brian and Jan and the others on the line think about how important that is, because it's been a bit of a challenge. I don't think I'm the guy's highest priority. I've had to sort of go to the VP of strategy, who I'm friendly with, to get her to kind of get him to begin to really respond to me. And I feel like it slowed things down. On the other hand, he knows what the connections are. People know him. I probably need to avoid irritating my own institution. So I was hoping for some perspective on that. Also, I've got to work out the details once we get the actual date, and we're now waiting for the staffers to like call us back with dates. I have to plan the actual structure of the meeting, and I had been visualizing that we might well spend several hours together, and I would bring them to different sites and introduce them to different teams, and I'm now hearing that that's probably unrealistic. So I'm trying to figure out what I really can do and squeeze into the hour or so that I'm likely to get. And then finally, on the day that people come, I've heard rumors that a lot of times folks show up late, or they may be distracted with other things, and how I might need to plan ahead to flex schedules, whether it's worth trying to actually get a patient there or community members, or I should just focus on the team. As you can see, I've got a lot of questions. So that's sort of the Reader's Digest version of what I've been struggling with off and on for the last couple of weeks. And I think we have Bert Waters on the line. What do you think, Bert?
Mute it. So for us, I know that we were lucky to be at a meeting where Mark Warner, who is one of our senators, was at. We tend to, and we're also located close to DC, so it's a little bit easier for us. But we actually, Ed, my boss Ed Ansello, actually was able to have like 5 minutes with Mark and mentioned the plight of the Title VII funding. And the fact that he got those 5 minutes was so valuable. And that was at a meeting for another event. And we always try to take advantage of that if we see that Warner or Kane or any of our Congress people are at specific meetings that we are also attending, then we will bring them up. And we don't get an hour. We usually just get about 3 to 5 minutes. And I'll tell, it's just a few of us on the line, I'll tell you what Warner said was that that he was confident that the NIH funding would not be cut, but he was not very confident that HHS funding would have the same luck. He felt as if he said the other side was interested in cutting HHS. And so Ed relayed that to me, and he also lost some sleep over it. But that was a couple of weeks ago, so you just don't know where we are today.
Thanks.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I'm just saying that if you can get an hour with your legislator, that's golden. So we usually get little 5-minute snippets.
Yeah.
And we also,
what the liaison guy told me was that if it was the actual congressman, it would probably be 5 to 10 minutes. If it was the staffer, I might get an hour.
Yeah, it's Robin. I wonder if I could jump into, in my little experience on the Hill, and Brian has had a lot more, I do think it can be has even a greater impact sometimes if you meet with staffers, so don't feel diminished if you don't get with the member. The other thing is, at Rush, we very much used our government affairs folks in DC, and Priscilla Chapman, her name, has really been working hard on these issues.
What would you say, Brian? Do you have any advice for me on those points?
Sure. Thank you. Those are good comments from Burton and Robin as well. I do think the first key point is do whatever you need to do to make sure your institution is comfortable with this advocacy potential opportunity or site visit or whatever, because this is one case where I think getting permission ahead of time or agreement can be helpful, and you'll hear a range of responses from institutions. We've had members who ended up having the Washington office of a bigger institution say, go to the meeting with them, be very supportive. So anyway, those are really good things to get out of the way, make sure everybody's comfortable with the situation. The structure and the length of the meeting is going to just vary so much. If you for your site visit, for example, are able to have some real people, if you will, a photo opportunity, something that may be newsworthy,
Okay.
maybe get the local press, you're more likely to have the member stay a little longer and make a presentation, or maybe you've decided you're going to give the member a congratulatory certificate or award for his or her support. Those are the kinds of things that get staff people interested in seeing if they can get a little mileage out of it. If you're just going to have the member come over for 5 minutes or so to see the site, it's a little tricky, because just getting there is going to take more time than the visit itself. They're willing to do it sometimes, but at some point you'll have to decide, is it worth the effort, or shall I go sit down and get 15 minutes at their office with the member? But Robin's point is critical. If the staff is willing to come, and see what you're doing and talk to some of your colleagues. That can be very beneficial.
Okay, thank you. Is Jan Busby Whitehead on the line? Not sure if Jan made it. Maybe not. Okay. Well, that's all right. Why don't we go ahead? I know, Brian, that you had some observations prepared in terms of general advice to share with the callers.
Sure. Yeah. Let me jump in there, and I'm going to try and cover a range of things, and I won't do it in a thorough way, but just to try to give you a sense of setting up the meeting and preparing for the meeting, and what to bring, and some tips, I guess. But this is, the point of all of this is that we are trying as NASH members to engage ourselves, share our work, share the value of what we do and our expertise with our members of the House and the Senate, and not just the value of the actual work, but the actual value to the community. If you're training caregivers, that's one aspect of this. And so I hope in the background materials that Kathy has shared with you, you get a sense of the messaging. But anyway, this is in some cases the introductory meeting, but what you want to leave with is having them have a good understanding of what you do, but also think of you as a potential valuable resource down the road, not only to the member, but also to the staff. And you may be meeting with a range of staff people if they are coming with the senator or the member of Congress. You could be, literally you could have the person's driver, or you might have a district office person. Once in a while during recess, some of the staff from Washington will be there as well. It even could be a committee staff person. So it could be anyone from what they call the chief of staff or the AA to a legislative person. But do get a sense of who that person is, so you know the knowledge base to some extent. And keep in mind that you can always follow up with other staff people who may understand aging and healthcare more than the person who might happen to join you, particularly out in the field. You just may not get an expert on your issues there. When you're setting up the meeting, we've given you a list of all the GWEPs and the members of the House and the Senate, and whether they serve on the Appropriations Committee, the subcommittee that has jurisdiction, the Labor HHS subcommittee we call it, or the authorizing committees. So you should know that going into the meeting, obviously, if they are a person who's directly involved in determining how much money or how the program will be reauthorized. You can look at our materials to get to those folks, but if for some reason you don't have it, you can always go to www.house.gov or www.senate.gov to find the telephone numbers of both the district offices and the DC offices. And you should try to do that as soon as possible, because obviously you'd like to have a meeting when they're back for a recess, and they just got back to town here now. So the earlier you discuss with their staff, meeting with them the next time they're home, the better off you are. And when you request a meeting, go ahead.
Is there any set time for that recess that we know now, Brian? Or
yes. Yeah, I think it would take too much time to go through all the recesses, but there will be recesses in April, May, June, July, and then they'll basically be available all August. Of course, we would like the meeting to take place in the very near future, if possible. And like I said, they were just home. They'll be home at the end of April and the first month, or the first week in May. They'll be back here the next week, and then they'll be back on recess I see. Anyway, I think I should put that in an email because it's silly for me to go through the calendar now. When you request a meeting, if you're asking for a site visit, I think it's fair to ask for, around 30 minutes or so. But as you discuss what will actually happen, the length of the meeting will be determined. Obviously, if you're going to do a press event, if the member says, "Oh, can you get some seniors there? Can you talk? Can you bring some caregivers in that you've trained or something like that?" You'll need some more time. But usually I suggest asking for about 30 minutes. And then if you're going to have just a meeting and no event, be ready to accept a 15-minute meeting, and also be ready to accept the fact that they may say, well, we can't come over to the institution, but would you come over to the district office and the senator can give you 15 minutes then? That would be fine. It's a start, right? And make sure when you talk to the office, you get the staffer's name and title and office and all of the specifics so you end up at the right place at the right time. And if they're coming to see you, make sure you follow up, particularly with emails, with all the details. Every time you write the email, make sure all of the details are there so that there's no misunderstanding. In preparing for the meeting, you should think about who else will be there besides yourself. 5 people is probably usually about as many as you'd want to have. You should decide ahead of time who's going to be talking, who's going to kind of chair or lead the discussion, who's going to make the introductions, etc. These are, basic tips, but it can really help in making sure these things work through. Did someone have a comment? In addition, it's always helpful to get online and look at the areas of interest of that legislator so you know what committees she's on, and you can look at the bills they've introduced. Usually on their website there's some direction is given on what they really care about, and obviously you know your issues. It's not bad to know theirs, and particularly if as I mentioned, if they're on a committee that matters to us or if they've introduced a bill related to our issues. So doing a little bit of homework ahead of time can be very helpful. When you go to the meeting, obviously you want to make sure, or they come to you, you want to have your talking points that we provided ready. You want to practice them. You want to make sure you've got a business card, a description of the GWEP program, which we provided, a copy of our testimony before. Right now we just have the House version, but if we have the Senate version by then, you can share either or both. And if you're going to their office, I know it seems silly, but some federal buildings require a photo ID, and I've actually had people come all the way to DC before and not have their ID. So anyway, it doesn't happen too often anymore because you've got to get through the airport security. But bring your ID to the meeting just in case the building has tight security. For the meeting itself, just a few tips. I suggest that, as in most meetings, you do a kind of a formal introduction of yourself and your affiliations and the work you do. Explain the reason why you're wanting to meet with the member. Obviously, we want them to know better about our program, its value in the community, and the request that we've made for appropriations for the FY 2018 appropriation cycle. One thing is, obviously you have to be courteous and respectful, and sometimes the staff can be kind of short or curt with you, and they're under pressure to move the boss along or get you out and get someone else in. So just be ready at any time to summarize the key points that you had planned to make, even if you hadn't had enough time to make all of them at that point. Again, you're developing that relationship where you can follow up and say thank you, and just to remind you, here are the things that I wanted to make sure you understood about our program and what we're asking for. One of the important things I think is to make the issue as local as possible, humanize the issue, and let them understand clearly why this program is important to the community and to the state. And obviously, stories or having someone within your group who can tell about the value of the GWEP, what it's done for them. Some data can be helpful, obviously, the number of healthcare professionals that you have equipped to deal with so many people in the community with multiple chronic illnesses, et cetera. So some data, but humanize it and make sure that, again, that you're cognizant of their time, you're concise, and you have clearly stated at the beginning and the end what your request of that member of Congress would be. And I guess, obviously, you've got, if you can have a meeting, you want to be appropriate and do the thank you note and letter. And to the extent you can, share the response with others. Make sure they know you want to know, are they going to support our request, but also make sure they know and others know that you're appreciative of what they've done in the past, and to the extent that you can share that they have committed to be supportive of our program in the future, you want to do that so they get some benefit from being supportive as well. So why don't I leave it there, and we'll open it up for the dialogue, Maura, that you could lead.
At 4:30, but I'm happy to stay on the line if any of the callers have questions or concerns that they would like to raise at this point.
Chris, you're on the line. Do you have any questions or thoughts?
No, maybe not.
Robin, this is Brian, and not to put you on the spot, but you've done this kind of work for years, and you worked on the Hill. Is there anything that occurs to you that you'd like to add?
Brian?
Yes.
Hi, this is Jan. I finally got unmuted here, and I would just like to say you made some very good points about the Hill visit, and let me ask you, do you think it's worthwhile leaving a one-pager with the staffers, your card, and some kind of a way to communicate back?
Yes, absolutely. I think in addition to our testimony, we've got a one-pager that Kathy shared with folks, and absolutely the card. I think that can be really helpful. It's just the way a lot of offices work. Everybody has a pile of cards, and some of them go back and plug the data in right away. But yes, I think that's. And then anything else that you think is relevant. You could share, for example, that article I did in the gerontology news, or anything else you think you don't want to overburden them, and then also let them know you're available to be a resource on other issues as well when it comes to aging and healthcare, because our members are all experts in this field.
Great.
Are there suggestions from the callers about topics that you'd like to hear about in future discussions? Anything particularly weighing on your mind that you'd want us to prioritize for earlier presentation and discussion?
Brian, this is Sonia Harden. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes, I can.
I'm just wondering, when I looked at the budget that the president had put forward called the skinny budget, I found it intriguing that the number 403 million was listed. And I felt as though there had been someone in the background doing some form of calculation and that they knew exactly where they wanted to place the cut. Are you privy to any of that information as far as specifically where they're going to make all the cuts?
Yes, yeah. I wouldn't say that I'm privy to. They really just haven't said much. That was the skinniest budget that any administration had ever put out, and so the details will probably be coming mid-May. But this is what we think, and that is that they basically are ending all the health care professionals and nurse training in Titles 7 and 8, and not eliminating the small amount of resources that are there for loan forgiveness programs and such. So we think that's the way the calculation turned out. So we're absolutely convinced that that there's a very high likelihood that the GWEPs would be, or GWEPs, whichever you like, would be eliminated in the president's budget proposal. And in fact, on a Senate Special Committee on Aging hearing March 29th, Susan Collins, the chair, Republican from Maine, brought that up to one of the witnesses and basically made the argument that this was being proposed and that she was opposed to it. And so there was a little dialogue around that. So yes, everybody pretty much believes that it's an attack on, well, if we're talking about 38 million for the GWEPs, you can imagine it's a lot more program than just our programs. And so everybody is pretty much readying for the battle. Now, she at that time, and I met with her staff yesterday to talk about it, she at that time said that she would be putting together a letter of the Aging Committee opposed to the cuts in NIH and healthcare professionals training. And my understanding from yesterday's conversation was they have about half the committee members on the letter so far.
Okay, sorry. It's coming in static on my end.
Well, this is Brian. Let me just say.
Hello?
Can you hear me? This is Brian.
Yeah, sorry, that was odd. I was getting a lot of static. You're coming in clear, Brian. So.
Hear you, Brian. But
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to make myself available, Brian at consumers.org, if you'd like to write me a note, and we can either do it by email, or I could have a conversation with you if you have any specific discussion you'd like to have around your advocacy. Thank you.
Brian, I have one question.
Okay.
go ahead.
Of the half of the people that were signing the letter, were there any other Republicans other than Collins, or do you know?
Yes, there were. They didn't ask for any help in getting anyone at this point, so they didn't tell me who was on or off. But yeah, there's both Democrats and Republicans.
Right. Well, we are over the time that we had allotted. I'm again happy to stay on if participants have additional questions or suggestions. If not, thank you very much for calling in, and we'll look forward to holding more of these in the future on other and related topics. Thank you very much.
Thank you.